through the final night of Sade Robinson's life, entering the Twisted Fisherman on April 1st, 2024 for a first date, meeting up with Maxwell Anderson. The two seen drinking and eating at the bar before leaving. And heading to Duke's on Water for more drinks before going to Anderson's home on Milwaukee's south side. The jury already knows the very next day, Robinson's severed leg is discovered on the shores of Lake Michigan in Cudahy's Warnemont Park. Her car found set on fire near 30th and Lisbon, and Anderson spotted on nearby bus security cameras. All of that leading up to his arrest on April 4th. The jury learning Monday undercover investigators pulled him over near his home for expired registration. The detective recalling Anderson physically shaking at the time.
Prosecutors say a person set fire to Sade Robinson's car and walked away.
Video of that person was shown in court today. A person prosecutors say was Maxwell Anderson. Bill Miston has been in court. Bill, they're trying to tie him to that car. It was really a fascinating day inside that courtroom once again.
Yeah, to recap, Sade Robinson's burning car was found near 29th and Lisbon in the morning hours on April 2nd, hours after she had gone on a first date the night before with Maxwell Anderson.
Sade Robinson walked into the Twisted Fisherman bar on April 1st, 2024, wearing white tennis shoes, ripped jeans, and a black jacket. She was 19, meeting someone for a first date. By the next morning, her severed leg would wash up on a beach in Cudahy. Her car? Torched near 31st and Lisbon. Her phone? Dead. Last known location? The home of Maxwell Anderson. Her date? 3 hours at that address. Then nothing. And what they found after that? Make it make sense. When the clock strikes midnight, the truth comes out. I'm 12 a.m. crime, and every single day I bring you real cases of domestic violence that turn deadly. The stories the system tried to bury, the victims who deserve justice. If you're about that raw, unfiltered truth, hit subscribe. New case drops every day at midnight. Don't sleep on justice. This is 12 a.m. crime. Sade Robinson was 19 years old. A young woman with her whole life ahead of her. On April 1st, she decided to meet someone she'd been talking to online. Maxwell Anderson, 34 years old, 15 years older than her. They planned to meet for drinks, get to know each other. You know, the kind of thing people do every day. Nothing unusual about it. Except this time, it would be the last decision Sade ever made. That Monday evening, April 1st, Sade and Maxwell met up at a bar in the Menominee Valley called the Twisted Fisherman. Security cameras caught them there, drinking, eating, talking. Two people on what looked like a regular first date. From there, they headed downtown to another spot, Duke's on Water. More drinks, more conversation. And then, around 10 p.m., they left together. Now here's where the timeline gets real important. Investigators were able to track Sade's cell phone, and that phone told a story. After leaving Duke's on Water, her phone pinged at Maxwell Anderson's home on Milwaukee's south side, 39th and Oklahoma, and it stayed there for 3 hours straight, 3 whole hours. Let me tell you something. When a phone stays in one location for 3 hours, that's not a quick stop. That's not dropping someone off. That's time. That's a whole lot of time for anything to happen. And whatever happened in those 3 hours at that house, Sade Robinson was never seen alive again. After those 3 hours, Sade's phone started moving again. But Sade wasn't the one moving it. Around 1 a.m., the phone pinged at Kern Park, up north near Humboldt and Keefe. Then it moved again, this time to Warnemont Park in Cudahy, right on the shores of Lake Michigan. That was the last ping. After that, nothing. Phone went dead. Sade's digital footprint just stopped. But hey, while that phone was going silent, something else was happening across the city. Near 31st and Lisbon, in Milwaukee's Walnut Hill neighborhood, a car was burning, flames shooting up into the night. Fire department got called out. When they put out the fire and checked the vehicle, they ran the plates. It was Sade Robinson's car, torched, destroyed, and in the trunk, which somehow didn't burn as badly as the rest of the car, they found clothes. Her clothes, white shoes, light wash ripped jeans pulled through underwear, turned inside out, a black puffy jacket, the exact same outfit she'd been wearing on that date. Now think about that for a second. Her clothes are in the trunk, inside out, like somebody stripped them off in a hurry. Her phone's gone dark after pinging at a park by the lake, and her car is burning in a completely different part of the city. Moving on, because what comes next is where this whole thing goes from suspicious to absolutely horrifying. April 2nd, 2024, early morning. Milwaukee County 911 gets a call from Cudahy Police Department. Someone found a severed human leg at Warnemont Park, right there on the beach by Lake Michigan. A leg. Just a leg. No body, no person. Just a severed limb washed up on the shore. Milwaukee police catch the call, and one of the officers working the case makes a connection real quick. They'd been investigating a missing person report. Sade Robinson, 19 years old, last seen the night before, and her last known location, Warnemont Park. Same place this leg just turned up. So they start working the case from that angle, trying to figure out if this leg belongs to Sade. Investigators pull Sade's cell phone records, and like I said, they trace her movements from the bars to Maxwell Anderson's house on 39th and Oklahoma. 3 hours there, then Kern Park, then Warnemont Park, then silence. They also find surveillance footage from the area near where her car was, torched. City bus cameras caught something interesting. A person in a dark hoodie, wearing a backpack, walking away from the scene right around the time that car went up in flames. Prosecutors would later say that person was Maxwell Anderson. The footage shows this person hopping on a bus and riding it all the way back to the south side, back to 39th and Oklahoma, back to Anderson's house, like he's just taking a casual bus ride home after setting a car on fire and disposing of evidence. Oh, so now we're just out here catching public transportation after committing crimes. Like it's nothing, but it gets worse. Because that severed leg wasn't the only thing they found. Police went out to search that Walnut Hill neighborhood where Sade's car was torched, the area near 31st and Galena, and Sade's family, her own family, they went out there too. They were desperate, looking for any sign of her, any clue about what happened to their daughter. And they found something. They found a foot, human remains, flesh, pieces of a person scattered in that neighborhood like trash. Then the family found Sade's blanket. They called police back to the area, and when detectives returned, they found even more remains, more pieces. This wasn't just a murder. This was a dismemberment. Somebody had cut Sade Robinson's body into pieces and scattered those pieces across Milwaukee. From the south side to the lakefront, from Walnut Hill to Cudahy, like they were trying to make sure she'd never be found whole. DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared. That severed leg found at Warnemont Park? It was Sade's. The other remains? Still being processed, still being identified, but all signs pointed to the same horrible truth. Sade Robinson had been murdered and dismembered, and all the evidence, the phone tracking, the surveillance footage, the timeline, all of it pointed back to one person, Maxwell Anderson, the man she'd gone on a first date with just hours before her body started turning up in pieces across the city. Now, investigators went to Maxwell Anderson's house to search the property. What they found inside painted an even darker picture. Blood in a bedroom. Blood on the walls leading down to the basement. The criminal complaint didn't go into full detail about what else they found down there. But law enforcement sources told reporters they discovered what was described as a sex dungeon in that basement. Whatever happened in that house during those 3 hours, it ended with Sade Robinson dead, dismembered, and disposed of across multiple locations. The medical examiner who later testified at trial said they could determine that Sade's death was a homicide. But here's the thing, because they only had body parts to examine, and some of those parts had been in the water, and others had been decomposing, they couldn't determine exactly how she died. Was she strangled, shot, stabbed, beaten? They couldn't say. The condition of the remains made it impossible to pinpoint a specific cause of death. All they could confirm was that someone had killed her and then methodically dismembered her body. And Maxwell Anderson, he wasn't talking, wasn't explaining, wasn't giving investigators anything. Just silence. Like he thought if he didn't say anything, somehow all this evidence would just disappear. Like that severed leg would stop being real. Like those phone records would erase themselves. Like the surveillance footage showing him walking away from a burning car would somehow vanish. I said what I said. You can't burn away DNA. You can't erase cell tower pings. And you definitely can't make a whole person's murder disappear by scattering pieces of them across a city and hoping nobody connects the dots. But investigators did connect those dots, every single one of them, and they were coming for Maxwell Anderson with a case so airtight, he wouldn't be able to talk his way out of it, even if he tried. So now we're at the point where police have a severed leg, a torched car, scattered remains across Milwaukee, and surveillance footage of someone in a dark hoodie taking a bus ride home from a crime scene. The question becomes, how do you take all this evidence and build a case strong enough to put someone away for life? The investigation moved fast, real fast, because when you're dealing with a dismembered body and evidence scattered across multiple locations, every hour matters. Every piece of evidence has to be collected, catalogued, and connected before it deteriorates or disappears. Detectives started with what they knew for certain. Sade Robinson's phone records showed her last movements, the bars, Anderson's house, 3 hours, then Kern Park, then Warnemont Park. That digital trail was ironclad. You can't fake cell tower pings. You can't explain away a phone sitting at your address for 3 hours and then moving to the exact locations where body parts turn up. Then there was the surveillance footage. Multiple cameras caught pieces of the puzzle. The bars had security cameras showing Sade and Maxwell together, alive, having drinks. Nobody could dispute that. They were on a date. That part was real. But then, hours later, different cameras caught something else. That person in the dark hoodie and backpack, walking away from Sade's burning car near 31st and Lisbon. Prosecutors connected those dots by pulling footage from a city bus in that same area around that same time. The bus cameras captured Maxwell Anderson getting on board wearing, you guessed it, a dark hoodie and a backpack. And where did that bus take him? Straight back to 39th and Oklahoma, straight back home. Like he'd just been out running errands instead of disposing of evidence and setting a car on fire. Now, let's talk about that car for a second. When fire investigators examined Sade's vehicle, they found something crucial. The car was heavily damaged, burned almost beyond recognition. But the trunk? Not as badly damaged, and inside that trunk were Sade's clothes. Not just thrown in there, but turned inside out. jeans pulled through underwear. Everything reversed, like someone had stripped her in a hurry and just tossed everything in without thinking. A detective testified later about receiving a still image of Sade walking on a boardwalk by herself that night. She was wearing light wash ripped jeans, white tennis shoes, and a black jacket, the exact same items found in that trunk. So now we know, whatever happened to Sade, she was wearing those clothes when it started, and by the time someone torched her car, those clothes were in the trunk, inside out, and she was already dead and dismembered. But here's where the investigation hit something that frustrated everyone involved. When they searched that area near 31st and Galena, where the car was found, they also discovered something else. Car parts. Broken pieces of a vehicle near a smashed access gate at Warnemont Park, down by the lakeshore. State Crime Lab analysts examined those parts and matched them back to Sade's car. So whoever drove that car to Warnemont Park, where they dumped her leg, they smashed through an access gate to get down there. They weren't being careful. They were being desperate, like, you really thought you could just crash through a gate, dump a body part, and nobody would notice. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, Sade's family wasn't sitting around waiting for police to do everything. They went out searching themselves, walking through neighborhoods, looking in parks, checking alleys, desperate to find their daughter, hoping against hope that somehow she was still alive somewhere. And that's when they found the foot. Human remains in the Walnut Hill neighborhood, not far from where her car was torched. The family also found Sade's blanket. When they called police back to that location, detectives searched again and found even more remains. More pieces of Sade scattered like she didn't matter, like she was garbage instead of somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's friend. Anyways, while the family was out there searching and finding pieces of their loved one, investigators were working another angle. They needed to get inside Maxwell Anderson's house. Because if Sade's phone pinged there for 3 hours and then she turned up dead, whatever happened to her, most likely, happened in that house. When they finally searched the property at 39th and Oklahoma, what they found confirmed their worst suspicions. Blood. Not just a little blood, but blood in a bedroom. Blood on the walls leading down to the basement. Enough blood to tell them something violent happened in that house. Something that ended with Sade Robinson dead. The criminal complaint didn't spell out every detail of what they found in that basement, but law. Enforcement sources weren't shy about talking to reporters off the record. They described finding what they called a sex dungeon down there. Now, prosecutors couldn't comment on specifics during the investigation, but the implication was clear. Whatever was in that basement, it wasn't normal, it wasn't innocent, and it fit the pattern of someone who planned to do harm. But even with all this evidence piling up, the phone records, the surveillance footage, the blood, the car parts, the DNA matches, investigators still had one massive problem. They couldn't determine how Sade died. The medical examiner could confirm it was a homicide, no question about that. But because the body was dismembered, and parts were in the water, and other parts were decomposing in different locations, they couldn't pinpoint an exact cause of death. Was she strangled, beaten, stabbed, shot? They couldn't say. The condition of the remains made it impossible, and that's the kind of detail that can matter in court. Defense attorneys love to poke holes in cases where the prosecution can't explain exactly how someone died. They use it to create reasonable doubt, to make jurors question whether prosecutors really know what happened. But here's the thing, even without knowing the exact cause of death, investigators had more than enough evidence to move forward. They had means, motive, and opportunity. Well, maybe not motive in the traditional sense, Nobody could explain why Maxwell Anderson would kill Sade Robinson on their first date. But they had the means, his house, his basement, his access to her for 3 hours. And they had the opportunity, that whole night when she was at his house and nobody else was around to see what happened. So detectives built their case piece by piece, knowing they had enough to arrest Maxwell Anderson and charge him with murder and dismemberment. All they had to do was find the right moment to take him into custody without tipping him off or giving him a chance to run.
Maxwell Anderson, who killed and dismembered 19-year-old Sade Robinson, is sentenced to life in prison without the eligibility of extended supervision.
Fox's Bria Jones takes us inside today's heartfelt sentencing with passionate pleas for answers.
Inside the courtroom, we listened to emotional impact statements from Sade Robinson's family and the family of Maxwell Anderson. Maxwell Anderson also addressing Robinson's family for the first time, as the judge said he has shown no remorse. Anger.
My daughter referred to you as a man. You will never be a man. You're a
Emptiness.
You deserve what you get. He deserves the punishment that he gave to my daughter.
And never-ending heartache for a bright light extinguished before its time.
And the only one who took that from her is the man sitting right there. I beg you to not, I beg you to not let this man have any type of parole.
Sade Robinson's loved ones delivering powerful victim impact statements as her convicted killer, Maxwell Anderson, is sentenced to life in prison without extended supervision.
I cannot meet any person without the fear that they're gonna harm or kill me. Because all my sister did was meet someone, and as a result, he ended her life.
19-year-old Robinson was killed and dismembered in April 2024 after a first date with Anderson. The 34-year-old was convicted in early June of murdering and mutilating Robinson, then setting her car on fire.
And I don't think you're remorseful in any way.
Judge Laura Carvello saying Anderson told a pre-sentence investigator he regretted not walking Robinson to her car because she was abducted outside his home. For the first time, he spoke publicly about the case.
Because I did not commit these crimes. And so I plan to appeal my convictions while I hope and pray that further investigations not only prove my innocence, but find and deliver true justice.
Getting emotional as his father made a statement.
To Sade's family, there are no words that I can share that will reduce your pain. To Max, we want you to know that we love you and support your plan for self-improvement.
Improvements.
Any words for Sade Robinson and her family?
Robinson's family desperately want to see lead to answers.
But I'm going to respectfully request that you confess where the rest of my daughter's crown is. You've already done the worst. You can at least give us that much.
In Milwaukee, Bria Jones, Fox 6 News.
April 4th, 2024. 2 days after Sade's severed leg washed up on that beach. 2 days after her car was found torched. 2 days after her family started finding pieces of her scattered across Milwaukee. That's when investigators made their move. They set up an undercover operation near Maxwell Anderson's house at 39th and Oklahoma. No dramatic raid, no SWAT team busting down doors. Just a simple traffic stop. Expired registration, that's all they needed. Pull him over for something small, something routine, and then take him into custody before he even knows what's happening. Body camera footage from that stop showed exactly how it went down. Officers pulled Anderson over, just blocks from his house. One of the detectives who made the arrest testified later about what he saw. When they asked Anderson to shut off his vehicle, he complied. When they asked him to step out, he got out. But here's what stood out. Anderson was physically shaking, trembling, like he knew this was coming but hoped maybe it wouldn't. The detective grabbed onto Anderson and immediately put him in handcuffs. No weapons on him, no resistance, no running, just compliance. And that became important later because the defense made a big deal out of how cooperative Anderson was during the arrest. Like being polite to police while you're getting arrested for murder somehow proves you didn't do it. Defense attorney kept asking the detective about it during testimony. What we saw in your body cam is Mr. Anderson cooperating with law enforcement, correct? Correct. And he was answering your questions, correct? Correct. He didn't try to run away on foot, correct? Correct. He didn't resist arrest, right? Correct. Oh, so now we're supposed to believe someone's innocent because they didn't fight the cops when they got arrested. Like that erases the phone records. Like that makes the surveillance footage disappear. Like cooperating during an arrest somehow brings Sade Robinson back to life. Moving on. Once Anderson was in custody, that's when the real legal battle started. Prosecutors charged him with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson. The charges laid out everything investigators had found: the timeline, the evidence, the phone records, the surveillance footage, the blood in his house, all of it. But Maxwell Anderson, he wasn't talking, refused to explain anything to investigators, didn't offer an alibi, didn't try to account for why Sade's phone pinged at his house for 3 hours, or why he was caught on camera near her burning car, or why there was blood all over his bedroom and basement. Just silence. His right, sure, but that silence spoke volumes. The case went to trial in 2025. Prosecutors brought witness after witness to lay out the timeline and connect the evidence. The detective who tracked Sade's phone testified about those pings. The medical examiner testified about the remains, even though they couldn't determine exact cause of death. The state crime lab analyst testified about matching those car parts from Warnemont Park back to Sade's vehicle. But one of the most powerful pieces of evidence, that surveillance footage. Prosecutors played it for the jury. Video of a person setting fire to Sade's car and walking away. Video of that same person getting on a bus. Video showing Maxwell Anderson taking that bus back to his house. The timeline matched perfectly. The clothing matched. The route matched. Everything matched. And remember those clothes found in the trunk? Prosecutors made sure the jury understood what that meant. Sade walked into a bar wearing those clothes. Hours later, those same clothes were in her trunk inside out, and she was dead. That's not a coincidence. That's evidence of someone stripping a victim and trying to dispose of evidence. The defense tried to create reasonable doubt. They pointed out that police couldn't determine how Sade died. They emphasized Anderson's cooperation during the arrest. They questioned whether prosecutors could really prove Anderson was the person in that hoodie and backpack. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury saw through every defense argument. Let me tell you something. When you have phone records, surveillance footage, DNA evidence, and a trail of body parts all pointing to one person, there's no amount of legal maneuvering that's going to save you. The defense did their job, but they were fighting an uphill battle from the start because every piece of evidence told the same story. Maxwell Anderson killed Sade Robinson, dismembered her body, tried to burn the evidence, and scattered her remains across Milwaukee, hoping nobody would put it all together. But they did put it together. And in June 2025, the jury came back with their verdict. Guilty. Guilty of first-degree intentional homicide. Guilty of mutilating a corpse. Guilty of arson. Guilty on every count. Maxwell Anderson, the man who took Sade Robinson on a first date and never let her leave alive, was going to prison for the rest of his life. Sade Robinson should be 21 years old right now. She should be living her life, making plans, building a future. Instead, she's a cautionary tale. Another name in a long list of women who didn't make it home from a date. Another family destroyed by violence. Another case file closed with a conviction, but no real answers. Because here's what we still don't know. We don't know exactly how Sade died. We don't know what happened during those 3 hours at Anderson's house. We don't know where all of her remains are. We don't know why Anderson did it. Was it premeditated? Was it rage? Was it something else entirely? We'll probably never know, because Anderson refuses to talk, refuses to explain, refuses to give Sade's family the closure they deserve. What we do know is this: a 19-year-old woman went on a first date and never came home. Her family had to search for pieces of her across Milwaukee. They had to identify her remains through DNA testing. They had to sit through a trial and listen to testimony about how their daughter was dismembered and scattered like she didn't matter. And Maxwell Anderson, he gets to sit in prison claiming innocence, while Sade's family has to live with the reality of what he took from them. Every birthday Sade should be celebrating. Every holiday she should be spending with her family. Every milestone she should be reaching. All of it gone because she made the decision to meet someone for drinks. There's also a civil lawsuit pending. Sade Robinson's estate filed a wrongful death suit against Maxwell Anderson. Not that money can bring her back or heal the pain, but it's another way to hold him accountable. Another way to say what he did matters and has consequences beyond just criminal charges. The family also filed a civil lawsuit against the bars where Sade and Anderson met that night. The Twisted Fisherman and Dukes on Water. The argument being that the bars had some responsibility in what happened. Now, that's a complicated legal question. Can you hold a bar responsible for what someone does after they leave? That's for the courts to decide, but it shows how desperate this family is to find someone, anyone, who might have been able to prevent this tragedy. But here's the real legacy of this case. It's a reminder that danger can come from anywhere, from anyone. Sade Robinson didn't meet Maxwell Anderson in a dark alley. She didn't go to his house in the middle of the night without telling anyone. She went on a regular first date, the kind people go on every single day, and it cost her everything. So what do you do with that information? How do you date? How do you meet new people? How do you live your life without being paralyzed by fear? I don't have those answers. Nobody does. But what happened to Sade Robinson shows why people, especially women, have to be so careful. Why sharing your location matters. Why telling friends where you're going matters. Why trusting your instincts matters. Not that any of that would have necessarily saved Sade. Sometimes evil finds you no matter how careful you are. Sometimes you do everything right, and things still go horribly wrong. That's the terrifying truth this case reveals. You can be cautious, smart, aware, and still end up a victim. Because the problem isn't what victims do or don't do. The problem is people like Maxwell Anderson who choose violence, who choose to harm, who choose to take lives. Sade Robinson's story ends with a conviction and a life sentence. But for her family, there's no real ending. Just the ongoing reality of living without her. Just the permanent absence where she should be. Just the unanswered questions that will haunt them forever. And for the rest of us, this case is a reminder, a warning, a tragedy that didn't have to happen, but did anyway. Because sometimes all it takes is meeting the wrong person on the wrong day. And 19-year-old Sade Robinson, who should still be here living her life, paid the ultimate price for that terrible coincidence. May she rest in peace, and may her family somehow find a way to carry on despite the unbearable weight of this loss. If this story affected you, take a moment to remember Sade Robinson, not as a victim, not as a case number, but as a 19-year-old with dreams, with family who loved her, with a whole life that should still be unfolding. Share your location when you go out. Tell somebody where you're going. Trust your instincts. Look out for each other. Because stories like this, they shouldn't keep happening. But they do. This is 12 a.m. Crime, where we don't just tell the stories, we honor the lives that were taken too soon. Rest in peace, Sade. If you want to see more cases like this, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Let me know what case you want covered next. Until next time, stay safe out there.